Welcome csc200 to part 2 of ex13 contact form. And if you found part 1 either boring or not that helpful, this video will show you exactly what to do and hopefully very quickly. This exercise will be pretty much of an overview of what we've done in the previous exercises. So there won't be a whole lot of new content here, but hopefully it'll give you a chance to reinforce what you've done in the past and put it together a little bit more. I've just opened my container here, so I'm going to click on that. And you should have a new folder in here called ex13. And in there should be two files, one index.html and one display13.php. And again, I just put a 13 on there just so you could tell it apart in case you have another display page opened up and you don't get them confused. Now the first thing we're going to want to do here is get everything started up because we are going to use PHP myadmin. So I'm going to open up my start text here and get everything started. I'll get my MySQL server started and I'll restart the Apache web server, and then I could just type in MySQL to get the MySQL prompt running, and go to project, running URL and port, and we'll go to the PHP myadmin page and go in there, and we're going to create a database, but we're also going to look at some files first so we know what to put in the database. And remember, when we come here, before we go into here, we're going to put a / PHP myadmin, and you might see it come up here, so I'm just going to click on this. Your username is going to be PHP myadmin. You're going to use root for the password, and you're going to make a new database in here. But before we do that, let's go back and look at our files and get set up here. You could cancel out of this thing. You could close this text file, and this thing you can minimize so that's not taking up your space. And you might even want to move this thing over a little bit so we have more room here because we're going to have a lot more code. And I'm going to open up index.html because that'll show us what some of our content is. And this is where our form's going to be, and when you take a look at this, you're going to see the form, and I could open this up too. So actually, I'll go back here and do this one more time. And I'll go into Gorham PHP, and then once I'm in there, in that main directory, I'll type in ex13. And that's what our form's going to look like. And I'm not going to do anything with it yet, so I'll go back here, cancel out of here, and I do have this set up so it says ex13 contact form. I have our style set up just like it was on our previous one, so it might even be different than the video you saw for part 1. So that's all set up for you. All that you have to do in here is put the right file that you're going to go to, and right now it's going to go to display13, so we could just put that in there, and that's PHP. We have our method post and we have our return validate form, and that's already done for you, so you don't have to do anything with that unless you wanted to add more to them. I just put 3 in there because we're only going to require the first name, the last name, and an email. We don't have to require a cell number or a message or a referral, so we're not going to require them, so I didn't put them in there for validation. So we're just validating 3 of them, and then these things just set them to blank. That's what these are. They'll set them to blank after you reset, so they could kind of wipe those fields out. When we make our database, we're actually going to make 7 columns. We're going to have first, last, email, cell, message, and we're also going to have referral. Now, referral showing up in here, there's name equals referral. So we're going to have a radio button, and if we look at this, this is what we're going to have: first, last, email, cell, message, and then we're going to have referral. That's what this is down here, referral. So there's 7. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and you're saying where's 7? 7 is going to be the ID. So when we add an ID, there's going to be 7 altogether when we make our database. So that's where that's coming from. And just to look at this, we're going to use lowercase for all this stuff. So we're going to use names like this: first, last, email, cell, message, referral, like that, and ID will just be lowercase too. So we're going to set that up first. So let's go to PHP myadmin and do that first. We're going to go to databases, and we'll just call it contacts13. I know in the one video I said use your initials, but I'm going to call it contacts13, and then we're going to call the table itself just contacts, but we'll call the database contacts13. And I'll hit create, and when it does that, it's going to prompt us to see how many columns we're going to use. We're going to use 7 because, like I said, we're going to use ID, and we're just going to call the table contacts, and we could hit go. And then I'll just run down the names, I'll run down the types, and we'll do whatever we have to do. So this is just going to be ID. And before I do anything else, I'll leave it as int, and I'll move over here and I'll check AI so I don't forget. And it's going to do primary automatically, so you could just hit go here. So it's going to be the primary key, it's going to be auto incrementing, which means it's going to give itself a number automatically. and then we just have ID. You could put a length or value, or you don't have to put one here. You could put something like 10 or something just to have a number in there. And then these things are going to be first, last, email, cell, message, and then referral, referral. And none of these are going to be int. We'll just make these varchar, email will be varchar, and cell will be varchar. Isn't that a number? And not really. We're not going to do any math with it, so it could just be a varchar. And message, we're going to do something called text, so we could put a lot of text in there. It'll be like a text box. And referral, normally we could use an enum and we could have choices, but we have a bunch of choices, and you could see on here we have all these different choices. We don't want to have to do that in our enum, at least right now. And besides, this information is going to get pumped right into our database, so we don't really have to worry about it too much as far as having the enum in phpMyAdmin. So when we go here, we'll just put it in as varchar, and it'll just go in as a regular value. We'll just use 30 for the values of all these. You don't have to put any value for text, and we'll put 30 for all the varchars, and that should be it pretty much as far as setting up your columns. Just make sure lowercase ID, lowercase first, last, email, cell, message, referral, they're all varchar except for int, the ID, and text for the message. And ID should just have AI checked, and it's the primary key. So that should be it. And then remember, you don't go to go, we're going to go down here. So I'll hit save. And there's our structure. And if there's any problem here, you could always edit these now because we don't have any records in there. Everything looks pretty good. There's nothing to do right now because we're going to enter records from our web page. We're not going to do anything in here right now. So I'm just going to leave this open, and it might even close out after a certain amount of time, but we'll go back to here. Nothing to do here yet. So let's go back to our code. And again, this is our original form, and styles is done for you, and the HTML is done for you, and the validation is done for you. So you don't have to do any of that. The only thing I think you had to do here was just put in that display13.php, and that should be good. So you can keep that open. You could save it. Make sure it has the X so it's saved. And then I'm going to open up display13.php. And what we're going to do first is display it, and then we're actually going to make a thank you page so it would be what the client sees. So if the client or the user fills out a contact form, they'll just see what they filled out. They won't see a whole database. You don't want the users seeing a whole database of who signed up. That would be a breach of security. So even your display page, technically you'd have to have that password protected or something so nobody could get to that, or you wouldn't even have it set up at all. But we're just doing that just so we could get a visual here. So we're not doing the full secure database here, but we want to be able to see it first, and then we'll be able to just kind of see what the client will see or see what the user will see. So what we're going to do here, I think this is set up correctly. We have display contact database. We have all our CSS done for the most part, even for the headings, and I think this will look okay. I think we'll set it up like our last one was done. And basically you have no PHP code in here. We're going to put it all in here. Now remember, for the PHP code to work, it has to be a PHP page in order for the server to interpret it. So we're going to basically just copy our code from ex12. So if you did ex12, I'm just going to go in here and open up that PHP page and just look for all the code, including the tags. I'm going to copy right from the starting tag to the bottom tag all the way down to here. Look for the other question mark down at the bottom and the PHP at the top, and I'm going to copy all that. See, I told you this would be easy. And I'm going to go right in between these HTML comments, and I'm going to paste it. And don't worry about the indent. The HTML is indented correctly, but this, we probably need some room here, so it's all going to the left side, and that's okay. We don't have to tab everything over. And we have variables here, and let's start right from here. Let's start right from these variables, and I'll move this over so it at least lines up. We have server name, username, password, DB name, localhost, phpMyAdmin, root, SpongeBob. Now this one is going to be contacts13 or whatever you called it. Whatever it is over here, contacts13, that's what you want to use. So make sure you put 13 in there. That's the database. And then these things we're going to have to change because we're not using species and gender. We're using first name, last, and then email, cell, and then we'll have to copy a couple of these. So I'll copy, I think we're going to have 6 of these. We're not going to have a variable for ID. So we're going to do that and then paste that. And then make sure this one is message. Make sure this one is referral. And then we could copy these over here. So I'll just highlight on these, copy that, and make sure you don't copy over the $. And then I'll copy cell, and I'll copy that over gender. And same thing with message, and same thing with referral. And if you're getting any extra spaces here, you could take them out. I'm not sure why they're there. And that looks okay. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's what we need. And these should all have dollar signs. These should all be in quotes like that. So that looks okay. And this is the right database. And then this is going to check for the server name, the username, the password, and the database name. So that'll check for all these at the top. So again, we have a variable here that represents inserting into. Now, instead of characters, and you could get rid of these little backticks, and I'll just say contacts. That's our table. So insert into contacts, which is our table, and then we're going to have first, last, and we could get rid of all of these in here if you want. So I'll type them in there first, and these don't need backticks or quotes or anything. So it's first, last, and I think as you go here, if you start typing and you go like I think that'll come up, and you can see they show the variable one and the regular column name one. So I'll use email and then cell. So that I'll have to put an E in there, and then I think it's message. There's message. So you don't have to type these completely. It looks like it helps you a little bit. And then if you don't like spelling, referral, there's referral. So there's 6 of them. And then for the values, what you could do is copy email and put that over that. And I'll copy cell. Now I still have 2 more here, so I'm just going to copy message and I'll paste message and I'll put a dollar sign and then I'll highlight it and I'll put a single quote and then a comma. And then I'll copy referral and I'll put that here and I'll paste it, and then I'll put my dollar sign, and then I'll highlight the whole variable and put a single quote around it. So that's 6 variables here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and my columns from my table in my database. First, last, email. So everything looks okay there. So that's what we're going to insert. We're not inserting ID because that's going to be auto incremented, but everything else will be inserted into that. So that's our insert part. And this is checking if insert actually works successfully, and it'll say if it is, or if it'll give an error if it doesn't. And then moving down here, we have this SQL, and I think in my other version, I called it display SQL because we have insert SQL. This is just called SQL. If you called it display, that would make sense too, and it would even be more descriptive, but I'll leave it the way it is. There's nothing wrong with just calling it SQL. So that's our variable. SQL is basically selecting all from characters, except we're not selecting characters, we're doing it all from contacts. So that's the correct table now, and then everything else could stay the same. We're going to get a result from that, and then we're going to display stuff. So this stuff is going to change. We have ID, first, last, and if you want to copy anything from up here, you can. You could go up here and, copy email, although some of these aren't that hard to spell. Email, and then we have cell, and then we have message, and then we have one more. So copy this whole line here, including the dot, the concatenating dot at the end, and I'll paste one more here, and I'll tab it over, and this one will be referral. And if you're not sure about the spelling, go back and copy it, or try to type, or right here I could do that. And so those are correct. Now these are the headers, so they're going to show up above all the records. So if you wanted to, you could put capital letters here. They don't have to be exactly like that because they're just headings. But you could go back and you could put capital letters there because this is just how they display. These are not variables. They don't have to be exactly like the table from the database, anything like that. All right, so here's the output of the actual records because they're pulling information from the fields. So these have to be exactly like they are. So, and you can see there's 6 right now, including this one. So again, this is output, so that's why it has ID here. So this is going to display the ID. And I'll make one more here, and I'll paste it after that. And then I'll just copy these things. So I have ID first, last, and then I'll copy email. So everything looks okay so far. So we have the right information. And again, now you could go back. If you wanted to, you could go back and put capital letters here. All right, so we have our headings, and we have our information. And we have, if they don't find anything here, the results are not greater than 0, then it's going to say 0 results. And that would be if we're doing a query that wasn't select all, but as soon as we get 1 in there, we'll be able to see them. So this shouldn't come up. And then we even have that thing at the end from the previous one where we display the rows, and it says call span 6. We could make it 7 because we're going to have 7 columns. So we could put that in there. And we don't necessarily need that, but we can leave that in there for now. And we have our close statement. So that should be all we need. Just double check that we have the right table name, contacts, and we have the right variables. We should be okay. So I'm going to save this, and make sure you see the X there. And then I'm going to close this so I don't have any confusion. So we're going to see what happens when we insert something into the contact form. And let's just double check here, make sure this is okay and it's ready to go. So it should populate this, whatever we put in here. So I'm going to put in Steve Smith, and I'll just put S Smith 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 0, just to have that many numbers. And I'll just put, hey, it's Steve. And also maybe Steve has a lot to say. So I'm going to go to blind text generator, blindtextgenerator.com, and I'm going to copy this bunch of text here because he has a lot to say. And I'm just going to copy it, and I'm going to go back here, and right after here I'm going to paste this. So Steve has a lot to say, and I just want to show what happens with that. So this is his message that he's sending, and he found out about us through Facebook, and then we're going to hit submit. So this should jump to the display 13.php page. But now it works okay. We don't need this here. That's coming up because we have this Greek lettering in here. Now, one issue we have here is that this thing is really long, and we could shorten that. That is taking up a lot of space, and it's jamming all this stuff together here. And it doesn't look like we're seeing the lines in here, so we might have to fix something with our CSS in there. But we could always put another in there. So we're going to go back here. Now, the first thing to fix, and this is fairly easy to fix, fairly easy, is going down here. It's in the output, and you might think, let's just give a style to the TD, but it doesn't work that easy. And it's actually for message, so make sure you don't do the last one. But if you go in here, go right after TD, and you're going to make a div tag, and you're going to say div, and then you're going to put a space and say style equals, and then you're going to put 2 quotes, not a double quote, but 2 quotes. So that's the difference. There's 2 quotes, and there's the quote at the end. And then just to make sure that you don't have any problem with it, you could put close your tag there. So that way you know you're separated from the 2 single quotes and the double quote. And what you're going to put in here is you're going to say with and a colon, just like CSS, or with and a colon, and then 300px, and then put a semicolon, just like CSS in there. So it's opening div tag space style equals with 300px semicolon and a single quote, and then finish the tag, and then put a quote, and then over here you have to put a closing div tag. Just like that. So there's going to be in these quotes over here, there's going to be a closing div and a closing TD, and in these opening quotes, there's going to be an opening TD and an opening div with a style. So I'll save that, and I'll go back here, and I'll hit the back button, and I'm just going to submit this again. Now I'll put the same record in there, which don't necessarily want. Again, I'm just trying it out. So put Steve Smith in there again, and you can see it's alternating the white and blue. This was blue, and we kind of made it green for this. But now you can see what happened. It made it more narrow here, so that looks better. And some of these things are a little crowded together. We'll have to check these out. In our CSS, we have a TO. I see what happened. I have a comma here for some reason, and I think that's messing me up. So it's taking away the vertical alignment. It's taking away the padding. It's not recognizing this. So let me take that out and save it. And then I'll go back. I'll make sure you don't have that error in there, because I put in an extra style for TH so that we could have a different background color of the top. So I think I had something in there. I had 2 styles there. By the way, for CSS, if you ever want to target 2 elements, like if you wanted to make TD and TH the same, you could do that. But I wanted to make it a different color, so I made a separate one down here. And notice to override this odd color, because remember the first row gets a background color of blue, but to override that, I put the TH after that, so it gets a green color. And if you wanted to change it to something else, you could go here and do FFCC, which would make it kind of a pinkish color. So you could try that out. And I'll make sure I get rid of this, because in CSS, it's whatever's the last one that takes. So even if you put 2 styles and you had one blue and one green, if the second one was green, it's going to use that. So it's going to use this background color of whatever this is, like a pink color here. And I'll make sure I save that. And I'll go back here, I'll hit back, and I'll refresh, and I'll put another name in here. And again, if you wanted to get rid of this, if you went in here and you went to browse, if you had a duplicate, it's very easy to get rid of it. Restarting IDs at the beginning is easy. Going back and trying to redo all the IDs would be a problem, but I can go in here and just click that and just hit delete and get rid of that one. And then what I can also do is go to SQL and just write a quick, I've done this enough now, alter and then table, and then the table I want is contacts, and then I want to say auto increment, and if I start typing that, it comes up, and I'll just say equals 2, and I'll put a semicolon and I'll hit go. And what should happen is whatever one I do should be the second one. So I'm going to hit go here, and it looks green, so that should be okay. I'll go here, and I think I'll refresh this again, and I'll put Alan Anderson cell number, and he's just saying hey there, so he's not saying a whole lot, and he's an existing client, and I'll hit submit. And now you can see there's the red of the heading, and here's Steve Smith, and now I have the border in there, so it's showing all the styles now. And also I did something vertical align top. That's why this stuff is pushing to the top. When this gets real deep here, there was a style for that one. It's called vertical align top, so they're not in the middle, so everything kind of bounces to the top, so that's why that's up there. And you only notice it when there's a lot of stuff in here, but there's the second one. So the third one would be, and it took the number 2, so that's okay. And if we go here and we browse, we should see Alan Anderson in there. So our contact form is working okay. So now we have a database of contacts, which is online and secure, other than they could go to display and then see it, but that's not the idea of to do it like that. But we want to see it first, so that's why we're doing that. All right, so that looks good. That's pretty much what we want. I don't think we have to do anything else with that right now, because what we're going to do in part 3 of this is we're going to make a thank you, so that basically you fill in the form and it'll just say, oh, this is the information that you supplied. But if you got to this part in part 2, I think you're pretty good. So this is what it should look like. So you could save this, and then on the last video, we'll show you how to change this a little bit and make a thank you page so that you don't necessarily have to see this. And we'll take a break here and we'll pick up with part 3.